Hello everybody. I am going to right now do my first canning video. On this video I'm going to give you a little information in regards to understanding about canning. I'm going to give you a little tips, items that I use that help me out in canning. This way it flows a lot easier for you. First off, I like to get everything that I'm going to be using for my canning done. To prepare for it, I need to get everything prepped beforehand. I like to get my whole setup. I wash and clean my jars. I wash and clean the lids. I wash and clean the rings. I wash and clean, basically the actual item that I'm going to be canning. And I get everything together. A couple of helpful gadgets are basically this jar lifter so that when the jars are hot, when you're going into the can or coming out of the canner, it's easier and you don't burn yourself. This is an actual jar lifter for a lid. That way that when you're pulling this out of the boiling water, it's not going to burn you. This is an actual lids, basically a head space measurement, and it's got your measurements of an inch, 3/4, ½ inch, 1/4 inch. And you basically line it up like this, and it basically measures how much food you're needing in that. And each recipe or each item that you're going to be canning has its own specific headspace measurements. If you want to can something, I actually go to the National Food Preservation site, and I've actually logged down everything that for the food that I want, and I've got it on these index cards for me, so I don't have to constantly go back. You can also get canning books that tell you in regards to the altitude and all that. But where you're living at, you're going to need to find your actual altitude, because that altitude is going to basically show how much pressure or PSI you're going to be needing on your canner as you're canning. I have an actual, basically, a pressure gauge. I don't have the actual pressure gauge where it tells you the actual amount. I just have these little weighted gauges, but this is 5. When you add another 5, that makes to 10 poundage, and that would of course be to 15. Where I live, my area is not above 1,000 feet above elevation. So more often than not, I work with either the 5 pounds or the 10 pounds. I normally don't ever really work with the 15 pounds. That's going to be somebody that's in higher elevation. When you are unpacking your canner, there's going to be a gasket seal. You're going to wash your canner out. You're going to wash everything. You're going to wash the seal as well. But you're also going to, before you use your canner each time, put olive oil on this seal. The reason for that is as the heat and everything and the water constantly work on this thing, it's going to dry this plastic out over time. In order to be able to preserve this for a very long time, for years, you're going to want to every time coat this with olive oil. Coat it with some type of oil in order so that it's doesn't get messed up so badly. It's not going to be like a lot. You're just going to need to put a very little bit on it. Just put a very dab. Let me show you really quickly while I'm at it. That way y'all can understand. It's just not going to be anything big. It's like that. Just a very small amount on a napkin. You're going to take it and you're just going to go in that groove there, and you're going to want to seal that. Get some of that oil in there, and you're going to want to go all the way around several times, just so that it's not too much, but it's evenly distributed. And that's it. And then you basically come over and you place it right back inside your canner. Now, when you are getting everything prepared for it, you're going to want to put boiling water inside this canner as well, so that you can see in there it has all that boiling water. That's just regular tap water. You can add a little, like a teaspoon or a tablespoon of vinegar to there if you've got hard water. If you have a soft water on your house, then that wouldn't be so much of a problem. Over here, I've got some more water boiling. This is going to be where I put my lids in. I might as well just do that right now. I'm actually going to be just stuffing these lids in here. And the reason I'm putting the lids in the actual water, it's not super boiling, it's just kind of very warm water right now. The reason is because you want this seal right here, that gasket seal, to get soft, so that when you put it on the glass, it basically makes a suction. You know, like when you're looking the back of, you know, a suction cup and then you stick it on a glass, you know, or a window or something, you're creating the same effect by getting that a little soft and gooky. You're also going to want to boil some, you know, good non-chlorinated water in another pot, because that's going to be what you're going to be filling these canned jars with in order, once the food's already in there. Plus, you're also going to want to boil some water to sterilize these jars first. I've always sterilized. Many people say, oh, well, you don't have to sterilize. I've always sterilized my jars, no matter if they go in the pressure canner or not. And the reason for that is it's very easy to understand. See this jar right here, right? If I had a jar this size of just botulism toxin, I could kill everybody on the planet. Just this size. Every single human on the planet could die just from this jar of having botulism toxin. Now, I'm not saying this in order to scare you away from canning or anything like that. You know, if you can right and you can correctly and you do it correctly and you take precautions, you can have a jar that's going to last 2 to up to 3, maybe even 4 years. And that's fine. The whole thing is, though, you have to, though, be cautious and be safe when you are preparing home food for your family. Ellen White says that, you know, tin and metal in her day, it's better to can everything in glass. And she even says that. So for us, now that we know about aluminum toxicity, we know about BP, lining that's inside those aluminum cans. The Ball Company now, they start doing their lids. Their lids are all, that gasket, that pink gasket that's in there, is actually BPA free as well. So it cuts down on a lot of contact, because if you can see, the food really doesn't even touch much to the top of the actual jar at all. It's mostly just sitting in the glass. So this is what I prefer. And, you know, Ellen White said in her day, it was very much preferable to do the canning and have your food in can jar like this, in glass, not in metal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get things sterilized. I'm going to pour in some hot water, and I'm going to cut up some potatoes, and I'm going to start putting potatoes in. I made sure they were all washed and clean, and I will be back and show you a little bit more what's going on in just a while. All right, as you can see, this water's already boiling. This is just for the sanitizing. This is not going to be the water that stays inside my canning jars. As you can see, I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to sanitize them. I'm going to fill this up, let that water stay there, go to my next one. Go to my next one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, since it didn't fill it all up, I'm going to give it a few minutes, and I'm going to let this kind of sanitize, heat this up, you know, kill everything that's in there, and then I will take it in just a moment and pour this into this one. And I'm just going to keep going down the line. The water is still so hot that it's going to sanitize every single one of these containers, so it's no problem. And then after I pour the water out, I'm going to be putting the potatoes in and pack them in. So just give me a moment, and once this has sanitized, I will be right back. Okay, as you can see, it's already been a little while. Now I'm going to pour the remaining of this. This is why it's so helpful having one of these. Pour the remaining, some of this into this one. Take it and transfer it to my next one. Now, this is ready to pack. As you can see, I've already cut up a lot of the potatoes. And what you're going to want to do is if you find any nasty areas, you're going to want to cut them off. If you find any big bumps or eyes, you're going to get rid of them. These potatoes, if you can see, they're a little whoopy on them. And I don't want to lose food. They're still good potatoes. They still have good nutrition in them. Now it's the perfect time to can them so that you can have instant mashed potatoes for another time. I'm going to just basically throw that in there. And with these, I need 1 inch headspace is what I'm getting these at. You kind of lightly pack them in, not too much. And then I need more. And you just pop them in. And I will be back in a moment. And I'm just going to keep working on down. What I'm going to do, though, as well, if I have a pint jar, I'm only going to put half a teaspoon of salt. But since this is an actual quart jar, I'm going to put a full teaspoon. Full teaspoon, see? Of salt. So, I will be back in just a moment. Okay, now as you can see over here, we have them all packed with the actual potatoes, and I put a teaspoon of salt in each quart. Now if it's a pint, you're going to be doing half a teaspoon, or just if you want to do a little bit less salt, you can. Just the salt helps preserve it a little bit better. Now on this back burner, I've had some hot boiling water from my Berkey filter in here. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm actually going to start taking this hot water and I'm going to pour it into those jars. Okay. Now I need to give this 1 inch headspace. I kind of know where it's at on each of them since I've been doing this so long. My 1 inch headspace is roughly right around here. Right below that rim, that little deep rim. We're going to fill up every single one of them. Just get all of this packed. Now my pot should be small enough for me to, light enough for me to bring it on over. What we're going to do next is very important. Okay, all of that is now in there. Now we need to clean off all the rims. We have to make sure these rims are very, very clean. If they're not clean, you can have problems in regards to all of this. Okay, right now what we're going to do is, you can see we've got 1-inch headspace. See that? When I run it around, I've just been doing it for a while. But what I'm going to do right now is I need to burp them. Yes, I said burp. If you notice very closely down here, you're going to see that air bubble? Now, if you don't get those air bubbles out, what's going to happen is it's not going to seal right at all. You need all the air bubbles out. You don't want any air in here at all as well, because that's what's actually going to cause problems. You see how it's, you just got to wiggle it in and keep burping it. It takes some time to do it all, but, you know, move it in a little in the middle. See how you just got to burp it. That's basically what it means, burp it. Right? And so I'm going to get all this done. I'm going to de-bubbleize them and get them all burped, and I will be right back to show you how to clean up the rims and to get the lids on. Alright, right now, as you can see, I've burped them, so I guess they're not going to have indigestion within the canning time. So, what we're going to do is we're going to clean off these rims, and we need them to have been cleaned off. Just get some straight vinegar, spray it onto a cloth, because we need to get rid of any oils from our fingers. We need to get rid of any of the food produce or any of the water that has any of the potato, anything, salt. You cannot have anything on these rims. Any little speck and it will not seal. Take the vinegar and you just wipe the rim off like that. Make sure it is super, super clean. Okay? Take your little magnet. You come over here to your very hot water. It was boiling a moment ago. I kind of turned it down a little. No, wrong one. That's going to be my big lid. So, I'm going to dig for my big one. Come on. Dig. Dig. Okay. And you take that and you place it directly on top. Place your lid over and you just secure it, and you're going to, you're going to hand tighten it, fingertip tight. You'll notice it's not going to be lit on there. See how very soft? Very soft. That's it. 2 fingers can pull it back off. The reason for that is because if it's too tight on, the air in here is not going to escape. This last inch of airspace will not escape, and you want it to escape. Take your hot jar, and this is hot water, and you're going to place it right inside. And you're going to do that to all your other jars, the same exact step. Clean the lid, put the lid on, fingertip tight, and put it in. I'll be right back once I get them all done. Okay, and now I have everything already in. If you can see, I can only get 7 of the quarts in this canner. When I look at my guide here, it specifically says white potatoes 1-inch headspace, and for the quarts it's 40 minutes. And since I am between 0 and 1,000 elevation level, I'm going to be putting 10 pounds weight on mine. So I'm just going to put the 10-pound weight on right now. Now you're going to line up, this is the little doohickey right here. It's basically called the top hat. If you'll notice, that's the top hat. Now, before you put this on, you're going to want to look through this little hole here. It's very, very tiny, and you're going to want to be able to see, if you could catch that really quickly, you want to see there's nothing blocking there at all. Okay? Now this is your safety valve. In case anything happens, this will pop out and the steam will come out. So it does have a fail-safe on it mechanism. So that's where the top hat goes under. So we're gonna kind of line it up. Let me get this thing on here. Really good. It sometimes makes me water. There we go. Okay, you hear that? Listen. Kind of vents a little. Now, I'm going to kick this up. On mine, since a flat oven, flat burner, oven top, it's about 6 on mine, about medium low, right about there, kind of like a medium, not too high. What we're going to do is you're going to wait for this to get up to pressure. The way I know mine is up to pressure is this little top hat is going to come up and it's going to go poop and it's going to stay up there and it's going to lock in place because everything in here, all of that water is basically going to become so hot and so pressured and steamed that it's going to push this top hat up. Once it does that, you're going to see a lot of steam come out of this little vent right here. And you're going to want to vent this thing for 10 minutes exactly. No more, no less, 10 minutes. And then you will put your weighted gauge on top of that. That's basically the first step. And what I'm going to do is that once this top hat comes up on mine and it starts venting, I'll come back and I'll show you what I'm about to do then. Okay? One thing I want to let y'all know is that if you look at the jars very closely, my water is about right there. Okay? So the reason you want it that high, like an inch below the actual rim, is because you're going to be processing these for, you're going to be processing it for, it says 40 minutes, but you have to understand that it's going to take time to get it up to pressure and to lower it down to pressure. And through all of that, you have to have this thing with water. If it doesn't, they're all going to crack on you. Okay? So I'll be coming back later. As you can tell, my little top hat is going to shake for just a few moments. And it's going to keep trying to come up. You can tell by the sound it's making and the actual actions that it's kind of jiggles after a little while. See if it does it for y'all. See, it's basically starting to get more pressure in there, and it's going to keep doing that until it completely pops out. So when it does, I will come back. Okay, as you notice, the top hat has now popped up, and so you notice the clock's kind of going blinking. Electricity went out in the house for a moment. But I don't know if you can see it too closely. But there we go. You see that? You hear it? That is now basically venting out. And it needs to vent like that for 10 minutes. So after that is vented for 10 minutes, I'll come back and put on the top hat on the little actual weighted gauge, and we'll show you that. Okay, now it's been venting for 10 minutes, that little piece right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my actual weighted gauges, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it over the top of this. And it's hot, so be careful. There you go. So, just like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for that to start jiggling. And that's when it's jiggling, then I can start technically counting it down to the 40 minutes time. And I will come back and show you what I mean when it jiggles. Okay, this is the jiggling and the sound you're looking for. See how it's starting to rock? That is now when I start counting 40 minutes now. So it does take a little while to get up to pressure because right now that whole canister, everything inside there has 10 pounds per square inch on all of it inside there. So after 40 minutes, I'll come back. Okay, I'm back, and it's been 40 minutes. The potatoes have been canning for that long, so I'm going to turn off the actual thing now. Now what I'm going to do is, as it slowly starts to cool down, that's going to start shaking. Then that top hat is going to come and go poof and go back down into the thing. When that does, I will come back and I will show you how to open the canner and what to do in regards to pulling them out. Okay? Alright, I'll be back when the top hat goes down. Ready? Okay, if you can see, the top hat has come down. I've got my mittens on. Pull off the actual pressure gauge weights, and then be very careful when you're opening this up. When you open it up, you're going to open it with the top facing and pointing, this top pointing to me, and you're going to want the steam to go that way because you don't want to burn yourself. Okay. Let's put that over there. Okay. I want this to just kind of like air out for a few moments because we don't want to immediately bring it from the hot to the cold, because if we do, they could shatter. So I'll be back in about 1 minute once this gets a little bit more acclimated. Okay, it's had a little time to acclimate and to kind of get a little bit more used to the coldness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this that I had showed you earlier, and I'm going to lift them out, and I'm going to lift them straight up. Don't tilt them, don't do anything, because you don't want anything getting under those lids. And I'm going to lift it up, being very careful, and I'm going to set them on this wooden cutting board. Now you can use a towel. I like the wooden cutting board though. When lifting all of these out and putting them over there, we just need to make sure. Now as I get them all out in just a moment, you may hear some pinging or popping. Basically, as they cool off, you are going to be hearing some popping as the seals seal themselves. Okay. Come back and get the rest of them. And it does take a long time to get it up to pressure, then for it in order to cook while under pressure, and then to go back, have that pressure go down. And you can't try to have this go faster, because if you try to, there, you heard it? That's my first pop. One of them popped. And if you do try to make it go faster by, you know, trying to jiggle the gauge or anything like that, you're going to cause problems. Now what you're going to do is you don't want to touch these for 24 hours. Don't touch them. Don't mess with them. Leave them where they're at. Let them cool. The next day, you will notice that the little middle part here, see how that just popped right there? The middle part is going to pop in, and it's going to, when you push on it, you're not going to be able to have a boom boom anymore on the top of it. It's not going to be able to go in and out anymore. It's going to be completely sealed. Now, if you do have some tomorrow that have not sealed correctly, you are going to want to put that in the fridge and eat that within a week. Or you could try sealing it again. If you saw that one right there, that just went in. So, and what I do is after 24 hours, I take the outer ring off. The only time I keep this outer ring on is if I've canned a jelly or any type of like an item that is going to be going, and I'm not going to be using all of the item at one time. Kind of like bell peppers or anything like that, where you're going to be pulling a few of the items out and you're going to be putting it back in to the fridge or something like that. That's the only time when I keep that little ring on. Otherwise, I take that ring off after 24 hours. The reason for that is because the fact that when I'm storing it, I need to make sure that the only reason that that lid, the middle part, is still on is not because of this outer ring. I need to make sure that no matter what, if at any time that lid part in the middle comes up, that I know, because it's very misleading when you have this outer ring on. So it's very, I find it easier just not to have them on. Let me show you, and just give me a second, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, this is my pantry, and if you'll notice, I do not have that ring on the outside of my items. And the reason for that is if these ever pop up, that's good. I'm just it being only this lid on there, it's going to pop up and I'm going to know fast and quick. Now, the reason I would only keep it on there is because I'm eventually going to use this right here, the salsa. If I have used this salsa, I'm not going to use it all in one thing. It's just basically a tomatillo verde salsa, you know. So since I won't eat all of this in one setting and it's going to go in the fridge, I'm going to make sure that this has to stay on there. And when it goes in the fridge, just the same thing like with your strawberries right here, your strawberry preserves. The same situation goes on there as well. You're going to be putting this back in the fridge, and of course you're going to need to be opening and closing it, so I of course leave, you know, those. But otherwise, no. Most of my stuff, my tomato sauce as well, all of that, I just leave only that on. And as well, when you are stacking them, you need to make sure there is always a cardboard in between each of the times that you're stacking, because the fact that you don't want a bottom or anything like that, one of these bottoms, to get stuck to the metal and rip off the lid at all. You just don't want that. You'll lose a lot of, you know, food that way. So I hope and you were blessed by this canning video, and I will hope and pray that you have a glorious time canning.